school, a beacon of learning where Shakespeare still matters more than the bill. Dickens overshadows the fragrant Miss Rowling, and Big Brother means 1984, not Channel 4. Everyone went to school, so everyone thinks they can teach. But the classroom is a tough place where you have to deal with insults.
I do suffer from a few pimples, and they're always like, "Are you not well, miss?"
The unpredictable nature of bodily fluids.
And then you're left with the
aroma
smell of vomit for the rest of the day, really.
Not to mention the hazards of PE.
And the point of the javelin went straight through the shoulder of the deputy head. On his first day at the school, he was rushed to hospital with blood pouring out of his shirt, but the kids loved it.
Do I take it that you're all in favour of remaining at school another year? Yeah. Did I hear some no's?
The main task for teachers is to motivate their young charges.
Here's a school where no one ever has to find excuses for dodging lessons. The reason is that you don't have to go to lessons if you don't want to.
You can dress up as a supposed expert and come in and have the students interview you, and that's quite a nice little setup, and that gets their attention. And the more bizarrely you dress up, the more interested they become in that. And how many pairs of goggles have you worn in one?
27 is my record.
Yeah.
It's pleasant to reflect that what is exceptional in this school today may be quite commonplace in a few years' time.
I do love dressing up, and the children used to love it. In one class they had, the boys in particular, any opportunity to get in a pair of high heels and a dress.
I was trying to teach about the Battle of Hastings. First time I remember trying it, the kids kept saying to me, "It's boring." I said, "Well, how can it be boring? I mean, this is one of the most fascinating events in English history. You can't be bored by it." "It's boring," they said.
I want to learn how to play tennis.
All right, I thought I'd get a bit modern. And I said to them, "Why don't you bring some stuff in and we'll make a model of it. We'll do a kind of display of it." And they put their hands up, and they were going to bring me soldiers, and they were going to bring me all these models and toys that they got and all the rest of it. So next week we got in the classroom and I said, "Okay, what have we got?" And I was trying to teach the Battle of Hastings with a Sabutio mat and one plastic space cadet. Impossible.
Undoubtedly, our educational system has come a long way since the days when school was merely a place to play truant from and to leave as soon as one could.
Of course, you can always play tricks on the pupils to grab their attention.
When I first came here and I looked around, I felt miserable.
Have a laugh. We're all human.
What you do is you get these two containers full of warm, lukewarm tea. And I always say, well, my wife works at the hospital, and I've managed to get hold of some patients' urine. And we really shouldn't have this in school, so you've got to be incredibly careful with it.
Which one will have the sugar in is the leading question, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. And so you then test your two containers for sugar at the end of the lesson. And then one's got sugar in it, which means there's a problem with that person's urine. And they all come to that conclusion. Then you gather them around the front, and you then tell them there's an easier way, a much easier way of determining whether or not the urine has got sugar in it, and that is to just drink it and gargle it in front of them, but at the same time looking across to see their expressions.
Cheeky little fellas.
Yeah.
Some teachers are very, very inventive.
A good teacher is improvising all the time.
I knew a PE teacher who hated getting wet and hated getting cold. So if it was winter time and he had a football match on, he would drive his car to the edge of the pitch, and he would sit in the car with the heater going, and he'd flash his lights once if it was a free kick, once one way, he'd flash his lights twice if it was a free kick the other way, and whenever there was an end of the match, he'd blow his horn like that.
Of course, if you can't get them interested, then get them out of school.
What is it you want to do?
I should like to learn French.
It is not a day off, it's not a trip out, it's hard. You have to do a risk assessment at the very beginning.
Bird flu. Yeah, it's very serious. Risk assessing.
I should like to visit more factories.
You have to look at how the day will be planned, how the children will be grouped. Then you have to count the children on.
So I said to one of the teachers, right, I'll go and round up as many as I can. You count the ones that we've got here, and then we'll see where we are. So I went up the steps, got some more kids, got them back down, And I said to my mate on the bus, how many have we got? And he said, 31 or 32.
It's a compromise, but it's better than nothing.
The children can try your patience where you're trying to do the ignoring tactic. And we'd been to London to the Take Britain, like the two schools had got funding to go. And there was a set of twins that could be a bit challenging, and one girl was kicking the back of someone's seat. So we tried, try and ignore it, she'll get bored. No, she still didn't get bored, so we moved her behind, she was behind me, and literally for 2 hours she did kick my seat. It's like, I'm not gonna crack, I'm not gonna crack.
Kids also have a nasty habit of taking ill, exactly when you don't want them to.
You always think, oh, well, let's go on the trip, we'll do this trip, it's going to be great, but the inevitable happens, and that is that the windows on the coach don't open, and a child vomits. And then you're left with the smell of vomit for the rest of the day, really.
I bet that smells good enough to eat.
That happened to me in Longleats once, where the windows hadn't broken, but we couldn't open them in case a baboon came in.
And vomit's not the only bodily fluid that can affect the joys of a trip out.
The anxiety of getting children out of a public toilet, because you only have to use the ladies if you're a woman, and all the boys, whatever they do, they have to go into the same toilet, and you have to count them along the wall, right, line up along the wall and count them.
It really is chaotic. Children running everywhere.
And a child was stuck in the toilet once, and we managed to get a child that was able to go underneath, squeeze underneath to unlock it.
So maybe it's for the best then that children spend most of their time in the classroom. But that means they generate work, and work has to be dealt with.
Marking's really, really, really incredibly dull.
Well, I think it's the one luxury that you can always rely on being there, isn't it? A good, crisp set of books and a red pen ready to be explored.
Well, it's why every teacher goes into teaching, really.
There are so many of them and so few of you.
It can be the thing that slips, and I know that I've spent an entire half-term catching up on a half-term's worth of marking, and being a shadow of my former self at the end, it's worth keeping on top of it. That's advice for NQTs.
It was very tiring indeed.
Marking never ends, it just seems to go on the whole time. I don't think for 3 or 4 years I've ever been at the spot where I'm 100% of marking done. I think I got there once, I got to within one essay of finally being level, and a kid came in and said, I've done 3 essays over the weekend, would you mark them for me, Mr. Davis? You never, ever beat marking.
This is one cup of coffee that'll be right up to standard, but not unless he comes back for a second will she get top marks.
Neil's the only person I know where he's written more in the books than the kids. It's fantastic.
I find myself, I wake up in the middle of the night sometimes and I've just picked a biro off the side off my cabinet at the side there, and I'm writing on, I'm marking the pillow.
Really?
Yeah, I'm just going through.
Ticking it.
Of course, nowadays, the children aren't the only people in school whose work is marked.
Ofsted.
Fear, dread.
My finale was a stall on a bench with someone perched on top getting the 20 questions treatment, and he looked ashen-faced. And at the end of this observed Ofsted lesson, he scurried away really quickly without giving me feedback, and I tracked him down, and he said I was going to fail you because of the health and safety risk.
You've got to feel a bit sorry for them. They've travelled the length and breadth of the country, they've been up all night reading documents, and now they're sitting in the back of a classroom hearing something for the nth time next to a radiator, and I've known 1 or 2 actually drop off.
It's stifling, isn't it?
You know, that girl was sitting on a stool on a bench, and I judged it to be too dangerous. And I was really quite surprised. He didn't. He said he had to go and consult
Did
the
you
senior inspector.
get satisfactory then for that?
Oh, I think it's beyond.
With
dangerous features.
Door opened, in came the Ofsted inspector, and this child came up and said, "Who's that git?"
So I wish you good luck and good afternoon.
But the climate's changing. Who knows, the day may come when inspectors will be greeted with a warm welcome and a hearty handshake.
It used to be, when Ofsted first got going and everybody was, you know, the inspectors were really earnest and so on, and checking if we were doing all the levels in all the subjects in the national curriculum and so on.
If the teachers weren't enthusiastic and capable, every one of these classrooms could be a private battlefield.
Much more correctly these days, you know, they concentrate on learning, so it's not just geezers like me at the front trying to look flash, you know, it's actually what the kids are taking on board.
We're using 2 hands and 1 foot.
Education has always had its own vernacular.
The basic way of life of the school is admirably expressed in the words of the ancient Greek Pericles in his oration on the Athenian ideal. The secret of happiness is in freedom, and the secret of freedom is in courage.
But now there's a modern version, a secret code designed to exclude the outsider.
I would like my LSA to follow the IEP for the SEN child.
SLT, or is it SMT?
TLAs, really, isn't it?
Ah,
TLAs. Oh, don't you know what a TLA is? Do you not know? So I feel empowered now because I know something that.
Oh
you
no, I
don't.
know
That
TLA. I know
makes me a
TLA. I know
senior man.
TLAs. They're those things
well,
that.
what are they then? You tell me. What's a TLA?
I don't know.
Oh dear, struggling with that
No,
one.
no. It's coming. It's coming. It's that
I've
thing.
got senior management potential here.
TL.
3-letter acronyms.
NUT, JCC.
Sometimes 4-letter acronyms.
GMVQ.
NPQH, National Professional Qualification for Head Teachers.
I have heard 5 actually.
I think you've got to be very senior to use a 5-letter acronym.
I guess you probably have.
Walt. Wilf.
I said it's going to be embarrassing. Walt and Wilf. And then if I don't know, perhaps I need to be sacked.
Well, I hate Walt.
Wolf and Wilt, no.
I was talking with the senior manager, and I thought I'd talk with his speak.
Good.
I was using SOW, scheme of work, and he said, "Sorry, I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you mean SOL, scheme of learning?"
Well, that makes it a lot more clear.
RIP. That's when I'm finished teaching.
2, 3.
One acronym causes more trouble than any other in a school. The C word.
Cover lessons have to be the worst part of the job, really. It's the surprise element, isn't it? You never know when you're going to get one.
And you discover at 8:30.
Yeah.
By looking at a list that you've won an extra German lesson.
Or a music lesson, which is normally what I get.
If I get to cover a music lesson, I play the guitars, I either go on the piano, you know, use the tambourines, I join in with the kids doing whatever compositions they're doing, and I don't get anything useful done. And worse still, I probably stop them from getting anything useful done.
To an outsider, the most striking feature, apart from the normal academic syllabus, is the magnificent equipment in workrooms like this.
The thing that's wrong with cover lessons is that you're out of subject, really, and you don't know the students so well, and that's what leads to the problems really within the class, because they're going to start testing you out.
Drama I used to hate particularly because our drama teacher, bless him, used to leave really complex stuff to do. If I was away for history, I would leave read page 32 and answer the questions.
Well, in my first school, I remember I got a cover lesson in humanities and I was trying to teach them about the suffragettes, and this deranged class didn't want to know, and I'm thinking, how can I explain to them how important the suffragette movement was? And I referred to them as birds with attitude, just to feed in this concept and modernise it and so on. I got hauled up in front of the head.
Yeah, I could see why you would actually.
No. You've got to draw parallels with the students' perceptions of the world around them and link that to historical moments. Head didn't understand either, Neil.
If the kids get you down, you can always throw yourself into the paperwork.
I hate paperwork. I have a thing called the heap system. I have heaps of paperwork. Heaps of things that I have to do.
I think the best thing you can do with paperwork, delegate it. Yeah.
You can.
To the bin.
I have a room at home which I actually can't get into with the amount of paperwork I still have to do.
It's just impossible.
Do you screw yours up, or do you just put them in there like that?
I like to file them. I like to file them. In fact, one of the disasters was when I had a box of quite important paperwork next to the bin, and a week later, after I'd decided I really had to do it, the cleaner had assumed it was the bin, and the whole lot had gone.
After a hard day at school, at least you can bask in the glory of a job well done and wallow in the respect of the rest of society for doing the most important job in the world. Can't you?
Apart from whatever academic knowledge they acquire, these girls are certainly going to make efficient housewives in a few years' time.
I think for me, when I look back and reflect on my school days, it's really interesting that you don't remember lessons, you don't remember knowledge, but you remember the characters that stood up in front of you and inspired you or bored you rigid, but in some way changed your life.
And when I talked to the children and I asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? Half of them answered, I want to be a teacher, miss.
The big thing that people have about teachers is holidays.
I find, 13 weeks off a year, I find that very grating. I mean, what do you do in week 4? And you think, oh, I've still got 9 to go.
You miss the job.
Yeah,
don't
you do. You miss the marking.
If you're on holiday, you're thinking about your class. If you're going shopping, you're thinking what you can do that next day.
With the long holidays, you've finished marking by about the second week of the summer, and what do you do? I mean, I've taken up graffiti in Norwich at the weekends.
Yeah.
Just ticks, big red ticks on buildings.
Or just going into the precinct and just trying to talk to students and teach them about science in the holidays.
I remember once being in a pub and there was a man sitting at the bar and he was saying about how well paid teachers were, how massive their holidays were, how they finished work at 4 o'clock. And in the end I just turned around to him and I said, well, if it's such a wonderful job, then why aren't you doing it?
But it is true. I mean, teachers do get long holidays and it's great.
But of course, as all teachers know, there's a lot more to the job than that.
I teach because I believe in hope, and I believe that the kids that we've got that are coming from that real bottom, percent of society need to get out of where they are and need to make their lives successful. And in our sorts of school, they need to be shown that their lives can be successful and what a successful life looks like.
These are the sort of things that make my mouth water. I'm all for this kind of education. It's like taking out third-party insurance on mankind's future digestion.
I've taught for a long time now, nearly 30 years, and for children to stop you in the street. I remember when you were my first teacher. I remember when. That's what it's all about. Not the paperwork, not the tracking, not the results, not the league table. It's the children.